Welcome, Roots family, to another episode of the Roots Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Sean Pitcher. We are very, very fortunate to have on Ashley Muschiatti. She is the head dietitian and assistant strength and conditioning coach at Joe Gibbs Racing. She's what I would call a unicorn in our sports dietitian field, having a strength and conditioning background and working in the sport where we don't typically think about sports dietitians working in. That's obviously NASCAR and racing in general. We're going to have a very unique conversation here, and she's going to be able to provide some perspective from both of those different sides. But Ashley, welcome.
Yeah, Sean, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk.
So can we get down to what the roots are of Ashley?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Northern girl, born and raised in the small state of Delaware, and after high school, realized it was time to get out. I was a track and field athlete, so I was recruited by App State. So I did 5 years at Appalachian State University as a thrower there. So that was my ticket down south, and I really haven't left yet. I did an exercise science degree, and then fun fact, I also have a Spanish degree. So I studied in Spain for a little bit. I love Spain. It's probably my favorite place in the world.
That
But
must have been very, very unique. I just worked with an athlete that was from Spain.
I loved it.
He always told me like, "Oh, Sean, you should definitely make the trip to come over here. Like, you're gonna love it."
I've probably been like 3 times, and then I've been to Europe another time after that. But love the Spain area. But yeah, so then after that, I did a few internships in the North Carolina, ACC, Clemson, Chapel Hill, all that, and then decided after talking to some of my mentors, it was the right decision to become a dietitian as well. And I mean, when you hear dietitian, I'm like, I don't want to learn all the medications and tube feedings, and I was like, that's a lot of work to be a sports dietitian. But ultimately, it was something that I actually really came to enjoy and came to love. And now I'm back down here, and so I'm hired by the hospital system, but contracted with Joe Gibbs Racing. And then through Joe Gibbs Racing, I actually work with 9 NASCAR pit crews. And so I work with all the pit crews from the Joe Gibbs teams, the 2311, the Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin collaboration team, the Legacy Motorsports Club, and then I have one of the Front Row Motorsports Club. So fun fact, we're actually in the playoffs right now, and I have 6 of the 16 teams in the playoffs. So
That's big time.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's fun. It's a great environment right now. It's stressful because we do like elimination. If you're not familiar with NASCAR playoffs, it's every 3 races, 4 cars get eliminated. So everyone will still race, but by the end, come Phoenix weekend at the beginning of November, there'll only be 4 cars that are still eligible for the championship win. So everyone's on edge, but it's still a fun time. I'm enjoying it.
So how many people then are like in a typical race? So when you get to the playoffs, is like the amount of people narrowed down, or is there always like X amount of people on the track?
So there's always the same number of cars on the track. Sometimes there'll be a few more cars based off of, like, for example, Legacy Motorsports has a car that Jimmy Johnson will run occasionally, and so they'll enter him. Trackhouse has a car where on road courses they'll enter another car. So it's always the set number, and then sometimes there'll be a few more. But when it comes time for playoffs, it's who's eligible. So if you've won a race or have gotten into the playoffs through points in the regular season, you become playoff eligible. So right now it's the round of 16, and then this will be week 2 of playoffs. After next week, 4 will be eliminated, so it'll be the round of 12. And so everyone's still going to race, but only those 12 are still eligible to move forward to then ultimately become the final 4 competing in Phoenix.
So then I guess basically then, like, let's say you had the final 4, whatever those final 4 place in, whoever, like, even if you got in, like, let's say 10th and everyone else got behind you, you would still win.
Yeah. So you can win, you can lose the race. It doesn't really happen, but you can lose the race and still win the championship.
That's funny how that works.
Yeah.
It's not like your natural thinking of like winning. You're like, well, winning's like first place. Like, well, if you got enough points and you make it that far, like, well, you have a possibility.
Exactly. Racing's definitely interesting, but I knew nothing about it before working in it, and now I will truly say I'm a fan of racing. So
it's still on my list. I mentioned it to my fiance the other day. I was like, we should at least go to like one NASCAR race, like just for the general experience. Like I think it would
Yeah,
be pretty cool.
yeah, absolutely.
So how is your time split up? Like is it like 50-50 strength and nutrition, or is it 75% nutrition and 25 strength and conditioning, or there's not really even any like breakup? It's just like where can I fit in where the most help is needed?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think that's something that I still try to figure out day in and day out, just because every day will change based off of like what we're doing. I'll say, so when it comes to like our in the morning, we have our Joe Gibbs and our legacy cars that come in, and I have about 10 guys in that group of, what's that, 6 teams, so 30 guys, about 10 guys that I primarily coach for, and then our head coach, our head strength coach, he does the programming for the rest of them. So luckily I've got some in our first group. It looks like a high school schedule, kind of how we have them come in. So they have an hour of practice, an hour of film, an hour of rehab. Like basically they go move through blocks throughout the day. So I do have blocks where I can kind of switch roles and go from the coaching side to the nutrition side. And then come the afternoon are my three like primarily teams that I do everything for. So the 34 and then the 23 and the 45. So when it comes time for that, I kind of put both hats on at the same time, mainly the strength and conditioning hat, but ultimately the strength and conditioning hat leads me to my dietitian hat, because I can see them and say, hey, you're looking a little sluggish today, or they're saying, hey, my numbers aren't where they should be. I'm having trouble recovering. This weight has been heavier for the past 3 weeks, and I feel like I'm just getting crushed. Like what's going on? And ultimately, especially in this small setting of each pit crew has 5 guys. So my 34 group, I really only have 4 to 5 guys that are in the weight room at that time. 2311, it's 8 to 10, because sometimes the gas men are there, sometimes they're not. So that small environment allows me to kind of be like, okay, well, after lift, let's talk about this. Or, hey, you're actively cramping right now. What are things that we need to do right now? So in that small setting, it allows me to really do a better job of wearing both hats, which I don't think would ultimately be possible in a huge setting like a football or something like that.
Yeah, it helps your ratio so small. You can do a lot of individualized care and service for those guys and education and real time application, which, I was having a conversation with someone yesterday. We go through school and it's just like 3 to 5 years of just learning, 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 learning. When in reality, it's like each year there needs to be a like learning application, learning application. So that way, when you get to that third or fourth year, hopefully there's base level skills that you're efficient at being able to educate and teach and let that athlete hopefully then apply it. Hopefully we can eventually get to that at one time, but that'll probably take a little while.
Yeah. When it comes to my athletes too, so my youngest is 23, my oldest is 45. So we get athletes after their college, their pro, their high school careers are over, then we bring them in and recruit them as pit crew athletes. My older guys, they started out, so the history of pit crews is they used to take guys from the shop floor and say, hey, we're going to send you over the wall. Then after some time, they realized, why are we taking these mechanics and trying to make them athletes when we can? Not every guy had a great bill of health that was on the shop floor. A lot of it was smoking, drinking on pit road. That used to be they'll tell you the stories. But now they're like, okay, well, why don't we take athletes and teach them how to do the skill of pitting a car? And so while some of my older guys are still from that generation, like I said, the oldest is 45. So their career as an athlete is extended. So for me, it helps too, being able to so last year was my big focus was eating before, because again, the older guys, the big thing that they focused on was the intermittent fasting, the keto diet,
A lot of these different fad diets that are out there that they
because
hear about on
they've been in
social
this.
media or from some other pit crew member. Oh, let me give that a try. But it's like, I'm sure you could tell us how long races are, but let's say if a race is, I don't know, 3 hours and you haven't eaten anything all day, and there's 150 degrees on the track, like that's a recipe for disaster.
Exactly. Well, you should think the older guys in the pit crews, they started in where there were no strength. There was maybe a strength coach. There were no dietitians. There was, I mean, nutrition, even just the role of sports dietitians in the past so many years has advanced. and trying to combat all the fad diets and what we see on the internet and all that. So the thinking that they had was a lot different than what the actual sports performance needs were that they needed. So my big thing last year was eating before practice, eating before a race. And we hammered that in. We had a lot of talks about it. We figured out some of the, and we can talk about this later. I think my role is putting a lot of Band-Aids on things because I'm not always able to be at races, and other people have to do jobs like cook. Like our hauler drivers have to cook at the track, and they don't have any cooking experience. So a lot of that is educating, building relationships. And then this year, they were really good at eating before. So now let's shift our focus to hydration or recovery and other things. But because their career can be expanded significantly, like 23 to 45 some of my guys have been in there for 15 years. They've been a pit crew member
great
for
because
15
it
years.
gives these athletes another opportunity, a chance, so they still have something they could look forward to or try out or see if it works for them for like life after sport. It's like, well, I don't have to completely stop being an athlete. Like, here's another avenue where I can still be athletic, strong, make a contribution, and it's going to help my team, and still kind of have some of those same mentalities if they were a high school, a college, pro, Olympic, whatever it may be. So pretty unique for sure. You don't see that transition every day, or again, until we probably had you on. Most people that listen to this are like never going to have even known that is a possibility that you could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, a lot of people hear it and they're like, wait, I never even thought of pit crew athletes as pro athletes. But yeah, our season is 10 months long. So they're gone every weekend except for one.
It's a busy year.
Oh,
2 months off, that's it.
Oh yeah. No.
And I know we had talked about before too, they have a lot of travel back and forth. So it's like, I know you could do one race and then was it a couple days and you're transiting to another part of the country and doing another race. So I'm sure with travel fueling along with, going through multiple different time zones, I mean, that has to have a huge effect on their performance from day to day.
Yeah. So luckily now, so it used to be that the cars were 5 lug nuts, the iconic NASCAR sound of hitting those 5 lug nuts. Exactly. Now the Xfinity and Truck Series, which for a lack of better terms, the way I describe it is like Truck is freshman, Xfinity is JV, and then Cup is varsity. It's in layman's terms, that's the best way I can kind of describe that. I know my drivers would hate that I say that, but
They're like, I ain't no rookie.
I was like, I don't know how to better explain it than to put it in freshman, JV, varsity kind of terms. But Truck and Xfinity still do the iconic 5 lug. Now that there's talk that might be switching over to a 1 lug, but Cup now just does 1 lug nut. So it's just 1 on, 1 off, less precision. And there's still a lot of precision, but like less precision, a lot more speed. We actually just did the fastest pit stop in NASCAR history this year, our 54 guys. And yeah, so we're getting like sub 9 second pit stops. But because of it's only 1 lug, they don't do many series anymore. They used to race Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now they just race Sunday. So the majority of our guys will fly out Sunday morning, go to the garage. The garage opens 4 hours before a race. They do so much more work before the race than they do during.
People don't understand behind the scenes. Yeah, like there's always those unique things for each sport and each kind of area that you just don't recognize until someone can bring it to the forefront and like this is everything that goes in before they even get on the track to start.
Yeah, I only go to 4 races a year, but the first time, like I go and kind of put myself in their shoes to kind of see what they're going through. And the first time they were like, yeah, we do a lot more than just pitting the car. And I was like, yeah, okay. Like, well, what all can you do? And I'm walking around and there's guys carrying tires everywhere, setting up pit boxes, getting gas, like pushing the car out. There's so much more, but the garage opens 4 hours before the race starts. And then the race, normally it's like 2 to 3 hours. I think the longest one was Coca-Cola 600 last year in Charlotte, went until like midnight. Wow. And then they have to pack up everything and then they go right back to the plane and come home. So they're getting back into like the Charlotte area around most of the time, depending on when the race is. A lot of the times it's like early hours of the morning. So it's there and back, West Coast. So we went to Vegas earlier this year. And it was you fly out the night before and then you come back that same day. So it's a lot of quick travel, all that kind of stuff.
I was gonna say, do you see a lot of stimulant use like energy drinks and caffeine and pre-workouts just because there's probably that general fatigue that's constantly setting in, or do you try other supplementation with them like creatine or maybe some like beet juice, black currant stuff, something that's not gonna have it's gonna make you feel more alert, but not have possibly the stimulant part to it that may affect maybe your overall sleep going into that day or the next night or something like that.
Yeah. So if there's one thing anyone pretty much knows about NASCAR is that it's fully funded by sponsorships. Like sponsorships are what keep us going. Not fully funded, but majority funded. And so if you think of those sponsors, our sponsor is Monster. There's the NASCAR, there's Celsius, like colleague has Celsius. So our field is just caffeine, energy
Everywhere.
beer central. Like Bush has a car, and you can't do anything to stop it because those are the companies that are funding you guys to race. And I've got great relationships with the Monster people, and we actually have a Monster. We actually got a Monster fridge in our gym, and I said, I'm all for it. I understand that we have to do the sponsorships, but I was like, I need to be able to control what's in here. So we only do the hydros, which are the electrolyte ones that they have, and then we have the rehab versions that are they're non-carbonated, and the first ingredient is either apple juice, water, or tea. So like they've got like a peach tea, a raspberry tea, and our guys actually really like them because they didn't realize how much the carbonation would affect them in practice, or how some of these stimulant-based energy drinks could affect either sleep. They were drinking a lot of them, stuff like that. At the racetrack, they're always around, but it's educating the guys on and giving them other options. So we have a few pre-workout options for our guys that like the beta alanine, the tingly, like, I mean, that's me. I love the mid head scratch, mid squat. Then we have an NSF certified pre-workout. But then we also use like the 2 before, the black currant. Our guys love the 2 before. We used to have the beet products. Our guys just like the taste of the 2 before, the black currant a little bit better.
Yeah, it's definitely a little better taste. Like anytime I've had the beets, like I've had guys who drink it, they don't like it, but they're like, this makes me feel really good, so I'm just going to deal with the taste. And other times I've had to like make smoothies or make some kind of slushy or mix it with something that's a similar flavor, just because that earthy taste is just so strong at times to be able to take a whole can of that down, or you use the powder, mixing a whole thing of powder with some water.
Yeah, and then we have like a lower caffeine. We use the clean pre-workout that has lower caffeine, no beta alanine. So we have a bunch of different options because, like I said, my guys they're young to old. They've got families at home. The caffeine is what keeps them moving because they then go home from work at 11 and have kids and sports and all that. So giving them the options, and then they really know how to kind of pick and choose what they need based off what they've already had, and what they're doing that day.
Yeah, it's just a reality. I mean, sponsorships, partnerships, branding, like that's not going to go away anytime soon. So you can either get upset, get frustrated, try to fight it, or like this is what's keeping the lights on. This is what's keeping the cars on the track. So realistically, like we're going to have to meet halfway. And like in the example that you gave, hey, we're still using some of your products. You know, we got a refrigerator out of it. We're going to stick some other stuff there as well, as long as everyone's cool with that. But that way you're still getting exposure. If there was filming involved, like we still have your stuff in here to make sure that the branding and everything there is involved. You know, it's just you can't be 100% stimulants are bad, caffeine's bad, you shouldn't drink this. It's like, well, how can we find a way to like work it in or reduce it, and then just find some other things we can complement with it, or changing the timing. Because in the real world, like you're not gonna be able to 100% cut everything out that you want to cut out. I mean, you said like beer's gonna be there.
Human.
You can't stop that. Maybe you can reduce them from drinking it, or timing when they drink it, but like you're not, it's in the environment. You have the pit crew, you have the gas crew, you have the driver, you have all the other staff involved. Like it's just part of the culture, and to like totally cut a culture out, and tell people to stop and not do it, like that's never going to be the best approach.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree.
So you said you trained the pit crew, sometime the gas men. Is the driver ever involved, or is it just those two entities that train in the weight room?
So in our weight rooms, it's just the pit crews, and I'll say pit crews including the gas men. Sometimes our gas men have different, they have to do like the video stuff. So they also don't, it's not the same with every pit crew, but so they're sometimes off doing other jobs instead of always in the weight room with us all the time. But it's mostly just the pit crews. I work with one driver, Ty Gibbs, who's Joe Gibbs' grandson. So he'll come in with us, and then he'll also sometimes go to Toyota. So Toyota, we're a Toyota team. So Toyota has the Toyota Performance Center, which is only a little bit down the road from us, and they have a great facility there where they have strength coaches, and they have a dietitian, and so that's where the drivers will do all of their training there with them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What is your strength coach philosophy? Like, is there, are you a Joe Ken? Are you, like a Matt winning DT? Like, or do you have multiple things kind of blended into one, or you had to figure out different things that work for this specific group?
Yeah.
What would you say that looks like?
I love that question, because I'm going to answer that question saying I'm an Ashley Muschiatti.
I got my own brand. Watch out.
Yeah, well, there's so many, and that's some of my pet peeves with younger strength coaches nowadays, is that yes, we all have mentors. I have great mentors that have helped me in my education and my career and all that, but you got to take what you like from, you got to learn and like make your own style. You can't be, I see Joe Ken's son, Peter, was one of my teammates in college. And so Peter and I did all of our studies together. And then now I see Coach Ken, he comes visits because he also knows the people in the racing field. So like, yes, I have a lot of influence from him and the tier system and all that. But at the same time, like, not all that works for me. Or there's aspects that I like from other parts of training that I kind of take and make my own coaching philosophy from. So I wouldn't say like I'm a one like copycat. Like, you have to have your own sort of spice in there, or like what makes you. And
you gotta have your own style. I mean, I think everywhere you go, you're gonna pick some certain things that you really love from those mentors and individuals that you're around. And then maybe there's stuff that other people do that just, hey, that doesn't jive with me. Like I can't see myself doing that. Or it just doesn't work in the way that I develop and put stuff together. And like that's okay. Like at the end of the day, as long as the athlete or the individual is progressing, getting a benefit from it, increasing their performance, like there's a million ways to skin a cat. So
exactly.
who cares as long as the results are getting what we want out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I will say, so with the field I'm in, because I have that wide range of ages, backgrounds, I've got a hockey guy, I've got a bunch of football guys, some baseball, some like I have one that's I want to say 2 years out of Alabama football, and he likes Olympic lifting. And so I've gone through everything, all my check marks with him, and I'm fine. And I program Olympic lifting with him. Whereas I have some other guys that they might still be the same 2 years out of football, but have some other hip back problems that they've been dealing with. I'm not going to have them Olympic lift. Or I'm not going to have my guy that's been in the field for 13 years and we just need to kind of maintain and help prolong his career. There's no point in having him Olympic lift or having him get underneath a barbell. So what I kind of do is I have I call it my main blueprint. And I look at what my goals are for that block, where we are in the training, where we are in the year, what I want each block to look like in terms of the goals, I guess you would say. And then from there, I take it and say, okay, well, I might have this person belt squat, this person front squat, this person do we have a horizontal leg press. So, or like a goblet squat, 2 kettlebell front rack. There's so many different variations, but I then
there's so many that's why it's like, cool.
Yeah.
You want a back squat, you want a front squat, you want to hit the pit shark,
Yeah,
whatever keeps you available so you can do your job. Like we'll figure out how to do it so you're still getting the stimulus that you need.
exactly. Like, so for example, I've got four guys, they're all tire changers. Two are, I would say, they're 2 years into their career. The other guys are older and have a lot more experience in the field. And these two older guys, still great athletes, top in their position, but I'm not going to have them doing so much weight. I need to maintain them. We're doing a lot more mobility, a lot more balance, maintenance work. But the movement patterns are very similar to my younger guys that are putting more weight up. That's what they want to do. And so the athlete has a little bit bigger of a say in this. Like we definitely have a lot more open communication on what's working, what's not working, how they're feeling. But that also is because we have a long season and I've got a lot of different athletes. And so if one person is like, you know what, I get bored super easily with doing a traditional workout, well, then I'm going to throw a little bit of cardio in there in between sets, keep them interested, or put a timer on them. So there's still ways of keeping my philosophy and my goals, but then kind of tailoring it to each individual as needed.
Yeah, and again, like we talked about, you have the time to do that. So it's like I got 4 or 5 guys on the floor. Well, I can do several different things because it's not like I have half the football team on the floor and we need 5 strength coaches and there's you need to control X amount of reps with 3 people. You just have the freedom to be able to do that, which not many people have. So that's very, very fortunate and definitely puts your athletes in that case in a lot better position because you can be able to curtail those things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how does fueling look like on a track, like, on a day where they have to race? Like,
Yeah.
you said someone's cooking or are they delivering food or are you talking to someone in particular to make sure there's different snacks and fluids available, on the truck or in the pit area?
Yeah. So the hauler drivers, which are the guys that drive the cars to the track, are my best friends come race weekend. And so the guys will usually have breakfast on their own before they get to the airport, breakfast or lunch, depending on what time the plane leaves. And then they'll fly there. They'll go right. A lot of them like to stop at Starbucks. So they'll try to get a little bit there, and then they'll go to the track. And then at the track, some of my teams use caterers that are at the track, which I don't. Those are my like auxiliary teams that like aren't Joe Gibbs teams, so I don't always have the communication with the caterers. So that's a lot more educating the athlete on what to pick. Um, but then our Joe Gibbs teams, our hauler drivers cook. So I have done a lot of work with them. I provide them all a binder, and basically it has just some education stuff in there, pre-race fueling, mid-race fueling, some grocery lists that guys can like fill in on different things they want, and it's labeled as like proteins, snacks, starches, because then that way it's not just like hey, what do you want? It's like, okay, well, actually, yeah, what kind of protein do I want on the hauler? I want some meat and cheese, like stuff like that. And then it has the entire schedule for the year and every place that caters and will drop off food at the track when they open, all their contact information, and then the menus. So our hauler drivers don't have to do any more work. It's all done for them. If they don't want to cook that weekend, they can look in there, find some place that's close, call them up. I've highlighted some stuff that I would recommend, and it'll all be delivered there. Sometimes it's easier to cater than cook. But then I also just have quick, easy recipes that they can do at the track. So hoping that maybe they find one thing in that binder that can help. So they'll do that. Our guys will get stuff mid-race typically. A lot of like peanut butter and jelly, fruit.
I feel like that's a favorite everywhere.
Oh
PB and
yeah,
J is staple. Are they original PB and J or are they Uncrustable
they're
people?
Uncrustables. It's the easiest to just, we've got a cooler of, again, all the like the Monsters, the Coca-Cola, all of our sponsored drinks, and then also water and sports drinks for the guys. So it's easy for our hauler drivers to just chuck the Uncrustables in there and keep them cold and not have to worry about it. Yeah, one time we tried to cater out and they brought the guys ribs in the middle of the race. And I'm like looking at them and I'm like, I made the joke. I was like, you're not even going to bring them any napkins? Like these guys have gloves. They're playing with cars. There's oil everywhere. Plus, we're out in we were in Vegas, so it was actually kind of cold. But it was out. We were out for over 2 hours. And I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, I'm gonna take these ribs and just like they
they
were
just
good
don't
ribs, but
they don't think big picture, like what's the environment, where are they at, how much time do they have, what are the other elements that they're dealing with, and what are going to be quick, easy, convenient things they can just throw down in a couple minutes. So that way they're
exactly.
still being able to be attentive and watch what's going on in case somebody has to come in to the pit. It's like, I'm gonna slop down some ribs, my fingers are all nasty. Oh, hey, the driver's coming in the next
Like,
lap or something like that. You're like,
yeah.
what am I gonna do?
Exactly. And then so after the race, the guys will then clean everything up, head right back to the airplane. We've been working for the guys that do use the caterers, they can take a to-go box. So one of the things they'll do is they'll make a to-go box as well as their pre-race meal, put it in the hauler, and then heat it up before they get in the car to drive back to the airport so that they have a good meal. But then when they get on the plane, a lot of times it's sandwiches, pizza. That's
The
what
typical
aviation.
post game
Yeah.
go-tos.
And
Cheap and
again,
easy.
that's aviation doing that, and I thank them for providing food for the guys. But I don't always have say, so that's okay. It's like, where's the band-aid? So we do snack bags before the guys leave. So we have like Huels and some other like nutrition shakes, protein shakes, honey stinger waffles, carb-based stuff that they can take and kind of add to the pizza, the sandwiches, even for mid-race, the carb-based snacks, the applesauce, the honey stingers, that kind of stuff, so that they um, can kind of add to what they're already given, that they have no control over, to make a well-balanced meal and then not be in a deficit come Monday and come the following week.
Yeah, you're adding some nutrient dense options in and where you can. And
Exactly.
I think it's good, you provide them lots of variety. Flavor fatigue always kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
If it's the same thing over and over in the snack bag or the same post-race meal, like that gets to be a grind, especially if it's 10 months over the year that their season is. So when you're having all this variety, you're giving them lots of choices, it provides them lots of freedom, and then they have just a Rolodex of options they can kind of roll through. And just it's going to allow them to be a lot more consistent, or listen to your recommendations, or hey, I'm suggesting you do this. Well, these things are actually now available in my environment to be able to carry out what you told me to do. Or I have the choice to make food, order out food, cater food, whatever it is. So I've got several choices. Am I, as the athlete, going to make hopefully the best possible choice that I can? Like, if this part, which is fueling, is really important to me. And if I don't make that choice, right, that's not on you. Like, that becomes on them, because you've given them the education, you've given them the options, the things to the most part are in place. Now it gets pushed back onto the ownership of the athlete to hopefully carry those things out if they want to be in tip top form.
Exactly. And their motivation now goes from intern or external, like me trying to say, hey, you have to do this, which is, I mean, in college settings, you have the coaches telling you what to do all the time, putting the training table out. My guys are now older. It's on them. The accountability is on them. But it's also now more internal motivation for them, because this is their job to keep a roof over their heads for them and their families. So it's like they can come to the realization real quick if they don't use those resources and stuff like that. They're like, oh crap, what is going on? I'm performing bad. But it's a lot more, like you said, it puts the accountability on them, and I'm there as a resource and a support system.
And sometimes that's where you got to catch them.
Yeah.
If they're complaining, if this isn't working out, that's not working out. Okay, well, what did we discuss?
Yep.
What is available? And just putting it back on them. Like, let's not start playing the blame game. Let's not say it's she's fault. Like, you're the one making those decisions, and there's plenty of stuff that you could do. It's just up to you.
Exactly.
Um, but kind of last thing to kind of ask before we end here is, do you see nutrition in racing expanding, or is it like there's just these 2 3 main racing company entities and everyone falls underneath them, and maybe like you and 2 other people, like that's going to be the only people? What do you see as the outlook of this area?
I definitely see it growing. At least like my lens is only in the NASCAR setting right now, but I know there was another dietitian that before was contracted out or contracted with a few different teams and would go a few times. I don't know what the exact time was, but would check in with each team and work with a few teams throughout the month. Toyota, like I said, has their own dietitian now. They used to just have strength and conditioning. They have their own dietitian now. I know there's another company they're called PitFit, that they just hired a dietitian. They work with a lot more drivers on a bunch of different racing sectors. So it's definitely growing, and I'm excited to see it grow because it's a big area that should have attention to it.
Fantastic. I mean, I think this is going to be a really unique episode. Really excited for everybody listening to this. If anyone wants to have a conversation with Ashley, all of her contact information will be in the show notes below. My digital link for my link tree will be there as well. I'm starting to partner with some more food and supplement companies. So there's going to be a lot of discount codes. They're going to be on that link tree to try to get you guys some opportunities to try some of these products, especially ones that we would try with our athletes, right? Most of the products that I'm probably going to promote for the most part are going to be things that I would most likely utilize with our athletes from a fueling, a hydration, sleep, or recovery standpoint. So definitely keep your eye on that and on our social media spaces for those opportunities to pop up. But Ashley, really appreciate it, and I hope you have a fabulous day.
Thank you, Sean. You too.